Okay. All right. I have Joe Kotulski. I should have asked you that before.
You got it. You hit the name right.
Sweet.
Perfect.
Kotulski. All right. With me today from Liberty Bible Church in LaPorte, because there's more than one.
Yeah.
Just one more?
There's 3 buildings and 4 venues. And in the main campus, there's 2 congregations that meet. So one's a contemporary service and one's a traditional. So there's 4 congregations within Liberty.
So 2 there, 1 at yours, and then
And 1 in Valparaiso.
1 in Valpo.
Yeah.
And they all go by
Liberty Bible Church, yeah.
Okay.
And then we add the LaPorte or whatever at the end. So.
Okay. Liberty's been in LaPorte how long?
It's been about 9 years in some form. And it used to be, it met at the Best Western for the first, I think, 4 years of its life, 5 years of its life. And then...
Now that you said that, I remember that.
Yeah, that was way before when I was there. But yeah, met at Best Western, and then we purchased the previous theater, which was the Dollar Theater at the time, then had been basically abandoned from what I understand. And then I think that was probably, I think we've been there about 6 years. So, and originally it was a multi-site model where video screen driven preaching, live worship teams, and then that was the model.
Yeah, I wrote down here that it used to be structured differently from what I remember.
Yeah.
And then Mike Sutton was there, and I think that's when it kind of transitioned over to, instead of being televised in completely, he did some in-person preaching.
Yeah, he started preaching there, and that was, the model was switched, and somewhere around there, I came along. So
when you came, it was full, you just preaching. It's not being tapped in from someplace.
But every location of Liberty Bible Church preaches the same scripture text and title message every week.
Really?
Yeah. But it's different because each preacher is different. So
outside of the text and the title, you have freedom to...
not total absolute freedom, but we do have a good amount of liberty. I mean, we're studying the text for ourselves, and we'll tell our own stories. And typically, the senior pastor at the main location will provide sort of like big structure type things, and then we have a meeting every week, Tuesday mornings, where we argue out details of how we're going to present the material, or we'll even argue the biblical text. How's the best translation of this or that or the other thing, and hopefully it makes all of us better. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we'll share stories. I've stolen stories or ideas from other preachers that we're gonna preach, and then we go for it. So it's an interesting process. Sometimes it's frustrating, but it's pretty interesting. So,
I'm not sure what I'm probably rebellious enough. I don't know if I could.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, all of our sermons look pretty different on a typical Sunday, but there will be times when it's like you'll say, "Oh, wow, that's a really great way of saying that. I never would have thought that." But once you see it that way, it's hard to not preach it that way. And then there's other times I'm like, I can't preach it that way, and it's. Yeah, but it works.
And without getting you in trouble, you have the freedom to be able to do that very thing.
Yep.
And so how many years you been there?
I've been there for 2 years. Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
And how did it come about for you to be there? Were you at the main campus?
I was not. No, I was at a church in Illinois. So I was an associate pastor at a church in Illinois, and I have a lot of administrative skills, and I kind of came to the point where I was like, do I want to keep going down that road, like do the executive pastor kind of work, or do I want to preach and lead a church? And the preaching thing was, I realized that's part of my calling, and most churches hiring executive pastors are not letting them preach very often, maybe once a year. And I said, no, I have to preach. And so started putting my resume out, literally, all the way in California, Baton Rouge, East Coast, everywhere. And we ended up here. So,
now, and a denomination is
the Evangelical Free Churches of America. We shorten it to EFCA. So
okay, and that's what Liberty Bible is part of that. Okay. So overall years in this particular line of ministry. So the preaching part, just the 2 years that you've been there, and feeling at home.
Yeah. I mean, I love preaching, leading this congregation. It's really the chance to lead a congregation. Because it's a multi-site church, there's dynamics where I don't get to make every decision at times. But then I also don't have to do everything. So a great example would be, I don't ever think about payroll. Never, right? We have a part-time worship director. I don't think about his payroll at all. I thought about it once when we were having the conversation to bring him on. And after that, that's it, right? We have other people on staff at the main site who handle things like that. But at times, there's things I don't get to make decisions about. For instance, the color of our brand. Some churches have brand, whatever. I don't get to make that decision, right? So I was on the team that helped make that decision and form it, but I didn't get to make it exclusively. So there's trade-offs, but I think we have a lot of freedom compared to a lot of multi-site churches out there. We have a lot of freedom to kind of lead in our own direction, and seldom is there anybody saying, "No, you can't do that event." It's like, obviously, if I was going to do something crazy, they'd probably stop it. But for the most part, we have, there's a lot of support. Like, oh wow, that's really exciting. We want to help you do that. So, and
as far as a position financially supported, you're the only one at LaPorte here.
I'm the only full-time pastor. We have a part-time worship director. So, yeah.
As I told you in preparation for the time together, started doing these podcasts because I thought it was a way to add to some other things that I saw going on, and none of them, to me, obviously can't do it all, can't bring unity, and so maybe just little bits. And I just found myself thinking it'd be nice if there was a place where I could go, boy, Joe's got a podcast going on. I get to know this guy. I just kind of know his name, or I don't know anything about him at all. And so that's kind of the hopes of this, to start doing a small part in helping pastors, congregations in the area to get to know each other a little better. What do you see happening in the area? And you can go as even northwest Indiana. What do you see happening that's good?
Yeah, especially in terms of pastors and churches working together. I see, what do I see? I see things like the Ministers Association would be an obvious one that, it happens every month. This is the place and time for pastors to gather.
The one led by Mike Sutton, essentially.
Yeah. That's a fantastic group. It has, every time it's worship, it's centering on Jesus, and it's prayer. I mean, it's the main ingredients of what a church does, except for preaching, right? And so I think that would probably be in the biggest area of disagreement, right? Or difference would be preaching or what you preach about. But in terms of worshiping Jesus and prayer, the Ministers Association regularly does that and is really, that's an important group. Now, I say that I don't go very often because I have 4 kids at home. And so going in the evening means I don't spend time with kids. So, but that's a good thing. I mean, I've seen churches partnering together to accomplish goals. I see, like our young adults all throughout the town are connected in some ministries. I've seen that. I've seen Campus Life would be an example. It's not a church, but it's a Christian-based group. They're people who are running that ministry come from a lot of the churches in town. seeing, yeah, I mean, those are some of the things that I've enjoyed seeing. And I mean, even when I first came, I've had multiple pastors approach me and say, "Hey, let's grab lunch, or let's get coffee together." And I haven't felt any sort of like, this is a toxic environment. I felt, okay, there's a lot of pastors and churches trying to work together for the same goals. So
yeah, that just makes all kind of things pop into mind. Head, yeah, one of them was you've been invited to go out and do that by probably everybody but me. We haven't done that yet.
It's all good.
But hopefully soon. Yeah, good stuff. So what?
Yeah, but none of them have invited me to their podcast. So you've more than made up for it now.
Evens it out. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. So what else? What more things do you think could be happening or should be happening to try to help unify?
Yeah, I mean, so I think we need to probably look at LaPorte and its diverse social problems, right? So it's kind of maybe a loaded term, but like you look at the people and you look at like all the potential things that are happening. So maybe addictions would be one, especially drugs, opioids, that sort of thing, alcohol. You look at even like poverty, right? So this is a pretty poor county, if relatively. And so are there ways to help people as churches? Are there ways that we can partner together to help with addictions? Are there ways that we can help as churches work with people to have a better quality of life? Obviously, that's not the gospel, right? That's just part of the gospel. Another area that I think churches could partner is jail ministry, and maybe there's something happening that I'm not aware of. But we have the jail in our county, and there's a great deal of need there. And what does it look like to actually go in I've done some work with the PADS ministry, and I've actually been able to see the churches kind of come together and support that financially, support that with volunteers, support that with, there's a church, the Methodist church in town. They gave so much coffee, sugar, and creamer that we will have plenty for at least another year. I mean, they just, they asked their people and they're like, yes, let's do that. And so, I mean, that's not an uncommon story. I mean, with the homeless shelter, we literally go through the building we're using, which was borrowed from Christ Church. And, that came from a church, that came from a church, that came from those Christians. I mean, literally there's almost, there's no funding from the government. Everything was coming from churches. And so I think that's an example of it did happen, partnership did happen, and it can happen even more. So,
yeah, I was thinking about lots of ministries that are needed and that can't happen, like that homeless thing. We just kind of got in on the tail end just about a month before it was going to stop. But somebody having it going in all of us churches, because it's, every individual church trying to do that is just kind of chaotic, but be able to collaborate together and somebody launch it and we can all support all kinds of ministries like that. I'd love to see happen.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really how that ministry started. It was, we were kind of looking for what our thing would be, meaning what would be the way that our church would specifically help. Food pantries are well covered in this town, right? There's several churches running good food pantries and feeding ministries, and we're like, okay, we don't need to do that. And then we realized, we do have this need. There's people who don't have homes. It gets cold. We need to help at least during the cold months. And then realizing, we have a whole bunch of people at our church that are really passionate about this. And so just kind of releasing them to kind of go pursue that. And then, God showed up. Like it was like really, like I always like to say, it was almost like we grabbed on the train as it was going by. And then, so that's what happened with the PADS ministry. And then really churches all around were like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know some of the pastors I've talked to, we don't talk about this much, but we start talking about the old county home out there and going, man, some good stuff could really be done with that place.
Yeah. Hey, you're not the only one who talks about that. I mean, Lisa Pierzakowski's been after that home. It's not a secret. She was loved to see that be the place that, that the homeless needs are met. Yeah. So, but yeah, we're gearing up again for next year. So we'll see. Still waiting on details to kind of fall into place, but probably within a month or so, we'll probably start talking about that and, promoting and recruiting volunteers and doing all that again. So.
I see you're 15 minutes about up. I want to try to keep it as a segment. One more. I wrote down pads. I wrote down jail. Do you know of anybody doing jail? When I first came here, not too long after that, started getting involved and was able to go right in the blocks and talk to them. And then something happened and closed all that down. And then you had to start dealing with them through that little trade thing. And I don't know, maybe rebellion on my part again. I just found it more frustrating than anything else.
Yeah.
Quit.
So I don't know. I do know there's a something called the God Pod at the Westville prison, but that's a very different. I mean, it's federal. It's a very different situation. Here in LaPorte, I don't know if there's also a prison in Michigan City as well. I don't know if something's happening. I do know of a doctor who visits, gives his personal time to help with some medical needs in the jail. And as he goes, I know he's been a witness as well. So, that's really an individual taking on, his faith and putting it on display. So as for a church, I don't know. Maybe there's an opportunity there. Yeah. Somebody who watches this could say, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, no doubt. And the more the churches unify, it seems to me that, Kingsbury gets a passion for something to launch it. We don't have to back up and say we got 25 members and, just can't do it. But to get it launched and to know, again, we have this unity of the churches where we come together and fulfill that. That's sure a vision and passion of mine I'd love to see.
Yeah. I think if you have 2 or 3 passionate people who could run it, in terms of leadership and just being connected to the community, and then seeing how other people find. I mean, that's really how the PADS ministry came. It was 4 people, 2 couples, who said, "This is important. We should pursue this," and then really kind of connecting the right people external to our church, and then just kind of seeing what could happen with that, and trying to get the right people in the room. And I think once that happened, it was like it released a lot of energy that instead of putting our name on it, so we're involved, but our name's not on it. It's not PADS Ministry of Liberty Bible Church. It just isn't. It's something that's separate from us, but people from our church are involved. So, yeah.
Good stuff. Well, let's take a break here and come back and we'll talk some more.
Yeah.